welcome to another episode of Global Conversations. This is bound to provoke thought, inspire change, and stimulate dialogue today. And we have the privilege of hosting Sarah Sung, a transformative leader and global citizen whose journey spans continents from Hong Kong to Dubai, Sweden, and now between Spain and Colombia. Sarah's professional journey began in the dynamic terrain of tech recruitment. However, an encounter with workplace bullying catalyzed a profound pivot in her career trajectory. This transformation led Sarah to explore the serene retreats of India and the enlightened path of mindfulness, eventually inspiring her to create Smooth Circle. Through Sarah's narrative today, we aim to explore the essence of mindfulness leadership and its potential to reshape the frameworks within which we lead, manage, and relate to one another in our professional environments. Welcome, Sarah. Glad to have you today.
Thank you so much for the intro. I'm so happy to be here as well.
All right, thanks. So, Sarah, it's interesting how we met. It was just kind of random. Both of us are in the, in a community, in the same community. And then you reach out to me when I asked for guests for this webcast. And usually I'm very selective per se in terms of who I have as my guest, because it has to be flowing with what was going on. But when we spoke, there was a lot that you mentioned to me that really resonated with me, especially with regards to leadership, organizational change, development, and of course, mental health and well-being. And so that's what really inspired me to have this conversation with you. And I'm happy that you're here. And, outside of the introduction that I made, let's dive in a little bit more into you telling your story and, how it all started and how it is today. So I'd like to hear that from you.
Yeah, totally. So as you mentioned, my career started as a technical recruiter based in Hong Kong. And at the beginning of my career, I have experienced different, not very unpleasant experience at workplaces. And actually that triggered me to start my path towards wellness and mindfulness. And I had learned a lot of different techniques and personal experience from mindfulness. And I found, wow, it is so powerful, this tool, and I would like to do something with it. But of course, ideas not always come right away. So I continued my journey within human resources, and I started my company Smooth Circle by 2016. And my idea is I would like to bring these two elements, human resources as well as wellness, together. And now comes to 2024 right now, and I'm more tapping into how companies and leaders can use mindfulness as a tool in order to form more inclusive workplaces by improving their processes, how they make decisions, etc.
No, that's great. And so, one of the things I want to make fun about this episode too is, outside of knowing the serious side of you that's going to come out through our conversation, I want to start off by, tapping into who you really are, in the sense of what is something people who know you, who don't normally know about, what is it that they don't normally know about you per se?
I can share two facts. I think usually people would not know about me is I used to practice gymnastics until 15. And afterward, I have been doing rock climbing for 8 years. So I'm one of those that I can do 15 pull-ups in one go. So this is something they know my hobbies, but probably they don't know I can do pull-ups like that. But another fun fact about myself is I'm allergic to ibuprofen. So
okay.
Yes. Yeah, so it's this is some fun fact about me. But yeah.
Okay. No, I mean, I thought, people are allergic to certain things, especially, prescription medication or, whatnot. So I'm sure that's pretty common with a lot of people, but definitely that's something that, it's good to know, right, about yourself. And so let's get down to the episode itself. And, one of the things that struck me about our conversation as we're preparing for this webcast episode is that, you mentioned the fact that you were bullied in the workplace, and that was that moment for yourself. And, it was a turning point for you. So tell in your own words, and as comfortable as you like to say, because I don't want to dive into something that's really emotional to you, but how did this moment shape your understanding of workplace dynamics and your own personal resilience?
Yeah, so like in short, basically it happened at a very early at my career. So I was like at my early 20s. What I want to do is I want to perform at my job. I was a recruitment consultant with a recruitment agency. So it's a very fast-paced, performance-driven environment. And I think at that point, the first 6 months, I was shadowing a senior manager, like everything. So like from client meetings, like maybe she would listen into my calls with clients and candidates. And I have been receiving a lot of feedback from her. However, at some point, I feel there were a lot of feedback towards me as a person. For example, how I talk, what kind of word choice I use, how I smile. At some point that she gave me comment about this. So for me, it's no longer constructive feedback anymore. So it's towards,
Yeah.
I would see it as like microaggressions and a little bit of micro insults in a way that comment on how I would like to present myself externally. And so for me, when I look back to this incident, I think I survived at the job for 6 months, and
Yeah.
I decided to leave because I could not handle anymore. At some point, like I felt sick after meeting because the stress that accumulate from those meetings was just too much for me to handle, and I realized I just could not do this anymore. And what I've learned is, especially for people who like just graduate from university and they just new at workplaces, I think they need to understand what are the boundaries at workplaces as even just like employees versus like what kind of feedback actually help them to perform. Because sometimes I do think maybe also in Asian culture as well, there's some context of the cultural communication that it's more common to see hierarchy at workplaces. When a senior to tell you to do something, it may not necessarily right. They
Yeah.
may not be right. So this is what I think is the most important, is like knowing your boundaries, knowing what makes you uncomfortable, and then try to address early on. And this is what I learned about workplace dynamic and myself. What are
Yeah.
my boundaries? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's quite fascinating to hear the commonalities of what I heard with other people that I've had as guests, and with respect to psychological safety, with respect to cultural intelligence and whatnot, and hearing what you're saying, that's something that really resonates with me, and I'm sure it'll resonate with the audience in the sense that at some point in our careers, not everyone's careers are perfect, and they've had that same experience of bullying, myself included, and it really takes a toll on your psyche, so much so that you feel disconnected, disengaged, unmotivated, stressed out. Like you feel all of that, and it makes you as a person, as what I'm hearing from you, is that it makes you want to get better and help organizations fully understand, especially given the fact with you, Sarah, you've traveled the world, right? You're, without having the designation or whatnot, you are very culturally aware of not only of yourself, but other cultures and how that affects how it affects people within the workplace, especially in a hierarchical structure that a lot of organizations, go through. And that's something that, that is even that this first part has really resonated with me.
Yeah, and yeah, and also it's like I think one inspiration that really strike me throughout my process in like running Smooth Circle is no matter what kind of scenario if you go out for dinner with friends, if you go to have a drink with friends, you always can hear people complaints or telling
Yeah.
stories happen at their workplaces. Very often it's about what happened between them and their seniors or managers. And then for me, it's like, oh, it would be amazing if leaders have a bit more self awareness towards how they communicate things or make decisions. Because very often they usually have good intentions, but
Yeah.
there are so many factors affect how they react to like sentences or like a
Yeah.
message. So this is it's in my heart. It's calling me for
Yeah.
running my business like that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly. It's a great heartwarming story for all of our listeners and myself included, to hear from you about this. And and in your discovery journey, if you will, one of the things we spoke about was your turn to mindfulness. You started from the personal resilience, and then you went to the mindfulness side of things, and your journey through India really triggered a lot for you. And so, what were those moments when you were in India going through that mindfulness journey? What did you learn from that, and how did you integrate that into your life and your career?
Yeah, I think when I was in India, so I was going through a yoga teacher training, but how they structure the course is mindfulness is like a compulsory session every day, like 3 times per day, morning, lunchtime, and evening. And there was a session, my teacher was giving us a session called Yoga Nidra. So
Yeah.
basically, it's a technique that guide your audience to fall asleep, but with consciousness. So you are listening to the guidance, and basically will help people not only just for relaxation, but also to kind of unpack some deep emotions that trap inside you. So myself, after it was like a 30-minute session, at the beginning I was have no expectation like to
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah,
yoga
yeah.
nidra session, and I realized that I actually got a lot of emotions and kind of like black flash from one of the childhood experience that I had, and it surfaced and then actually brought me tears. And I saw some of my classmates; they were like they just had like a broke down and like crying, and I just realized like different mindfulness technique is just within 20 minutes, and
Yeah.
it just triggered you so much from the inner side of you to outside. And I found this is such a powerful tool, and it it got me really curious and to learn more about mindfulness. Yeah, so that is why I continue this path, but not just okay. I went back to Hong Kong afterwards, just be an HR person, but then
Yeah.
I pursue this, and I want to combine these two elements together.
Yeah. And and so then after that, you started Smooth Circle, and that was pretty much a big leap for you, coming from the corporate side of things, corporate HR, to this. And all of this has transpired through what has gone on in your life and in your career. So, and you might have clarified this a little bit, but so what is the real foundation behind Smooth Circle, and how does your work with Smooth Circle aim to transform organizational cultures?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, Smooth Circle has evolved a little bit from the point when I started. Originally, my philosophy of starting a Smooth Circle is to create like a circle, like a wheel that
Yeah.
works sustainably and is successful. It's kind of like a symbol of an organization, like how a company can be sustainable, be successful. It's focusing on 3 points, 3 things, in my opinion, is the people, having a structure, and the mental health, all these elements together, then you will then an organization can become like a running wheel that works.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is that is how I brainstorm the name of my company, and I play with the word as well, like smooth and smooth. Um, so that is my idea, and that's why I want to bring in the HR components, that the skills that I have to form that the processes that work for your people, as well as looking after the mental health, the wellness side of your people as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's, that's great to hear, especially considering the fact that, what really resonated with me is this circle aspect. And it seems to be common across cultures. And that's the funny thing, because, within Black culture, we have the circle in itself. Indigenous, also, where they talk about water, earth, and air. When you see the circle of Confucianism, I believe it is. There's that, and there's a lot of commonalities here, and it's just a circle of life. It's infinity, and that's, hearing what your inspiration behind it is very instrumental in terms of how that all transpired for you, and it makes a lot of sense, especially within organizational cultures. So that is something that really resonated with me for sure.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, maybe also because of my family, they Buddhist, so
Yeah.
I think this kind of concept is I always hear it like when I was young, about yin yang, about harmony, and so I think this is also is in me, in my blood.
Yeah. No, exactly. So now let's get to the crux of it all when we're talking about mindfulness leadership. And I've had people on my webcast in earlier episodes talk about empathetic leadership, talking about inclusive leadership, which is the common one with everyone. So so I guess the question is, given the fact that we're starting to see that mental health and well-being is part of the equity, diversity, and inclusion conversations now, and being implemented within organizational cultures. Talk to me about your thoughts in terms of mindfulness leadership, what that entails, and is it really any different from the other two models of inclusive leadership and empathetic leadership, or even the traditional models of like transformational leadership, authentic leadership, all of that? And and I guess to elaborate a little bit more is, how does this model diverge from those paradigms by fostering that culture of inclusivity and empathy?
Totally. I think I can break it down into 3 steps,
Okay.
because I do think traditional leaderships, I would say, or like whatever other names, there's so many names nowadays, but
Yeah.
then the traditional ones are more prioritizing on results, like the profits, the numbers, processes, implementations, KPIs. And mindfulness leadership, the difference or the point of view is how what kind of consciousness that the leader bring into the decision making processes. And take a step back, I see mindfulness is as a technique or a tool for the leaders to enable all the inclusive initiatives that they want to implement. The reason behind is like mindfulness is a skill that focusing a lot of cultivating your self-awareness by different techniques, like meditation is very popular, like body sensations practices, movements, journalings. They are all mindfulness techniques and mindful exercise. By doing those exercise, leaders can enhance or also practice how they communicate with the external or with the people that is important to them. And And this is one thing, it's just how one individuals can use mindfulness to enable those inclusive initiatives in the organization. The second point is, have you read a book called System 1 and System 2 Thinking? It's a very popular book about how we always think fast, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah, it's thinking fast and slow, that one, right?
exactly,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly. So 80% of us actually using the autopilot mode, which is the system one. Very good example is how leaders make decision about hiring and who to promote at workplaces. Very often we find it's more autopilot. It's like a gut feeling, I
Yeah.
would say. And with mindfulness, it's basically to practice how you can take a pause, like stop, and cultivate some space between your thought, which is maybe some very impulsive thoughts, autopilot thoughts that you have. And then you take your time to be mindful about your decision and to make a more precise decision that you actually have consciousness with. So
Yeah.
there are a few steps here, like from mindfulness and leadership. I see mindfulness is a tool to enable all the good things that you
Yeah.
can bring into your organization.
Yeah. And so, it's interesting that you mentioned that book because a lot of us tend to go, like you said, to our gut decisions in terms of making those decisions, those hiring decisions, and those leadership discussions, if you will. And they don't think about the human element of it. Are they ready for that position? But also goes back to the person who's making those decisions. It's more like, they have to take a step back and think of it from the perspective of, that mindfulness. What do they need to do to make that decision? And taking that step back is something that a lot of, leaders don't do, or if they do, they don't do it well, right? And then of course, then let's go back to not only hiring decisions. Let's talk about the internal team dynamics. So from your experience, how could mindfulness leadership enrich, if you will, internal dynamics and enhance relationships with internal and external stakeholders?
Yeah, totally. So mindful leaders, how they would look like usually, they listen a lot. So they don't talk that much during meetings.
Yeah.
So there are lots of research show. Also, there are some, of course, small exercise and technique that a mindful leaders can implement during some meetings that actually foster more collaborations, more new ideas, innovations for this purpose. So being a mindful leaders can definitely help internally for your team to glue a bit more together. And externally, nowadays, actually, there are a lot of venture capitals like VCs focusing on like diversity and inclusion. And of an organization, if they like really put in resources and energy into
Yeah.
cultivating these, you will definitely have your name out there in the market that help you to attract investors, as well as it's very obvious that you can attract and retain higher quality talents because also talent nowadays what make a company stand out is they want to know how they would be treated when they join these companies. So there are a lot of benefits of really focusing and actually just taking a simple first step to cultivate mindfulness within organizations.
Yeah, definitely. And so what I want to know specifically is something that really, really is interesting is the business behind this. And I know, yes, yours is a little bit more genuine. But the one thing that really, really that I'm thinking about here is the apps that exist, like Calm, like Headspace. Do you find that those help with mindfulness leadership, or is it inauthentic, if you will?
Yes, I do think and I do appreciate those apps like mindfulness apps, but I do see it's more individual. It's on a very individual level that one's interested in improving or helping them how they deal with the difficult times in their life or even day-to-day struggle with those like mindfulness apps that are available in the market. There are tons of them, or like YouTube videos. There are tons of them. But I think when you bring this mindfulness to a more corporate level or organizational level, it's about how you behave from the mindful perspective. You can close your eyes and meditate yourself, but what does that mean to your team members and to the people around you? So I do see and I do appreciate those apps will help, but I think it's missing the linkage between how to bring individual from the individual levels to the organization level.
Yeah, no, definitely. Hold on a second. It looks like the recording stopped for some reason. So I'm going to refresh. I might have to go
Okay,
back to asking that a question again. So just give me one
sure.
second, okay? Sorry about that.
Yep, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah. So going back for a second, I want to go back to um, the apps
Mm.
for these mindfulness apps that are there. What's your take on apps like Calm and Headspace? I'm curious to know, especially given the fact that you offer this from a personal perspective, and corporations tend to go for, I guess you want to call, quote unquote, cheaper options. So what is your take in all this?
I do think I have tried almost like those famous one. I've tried all of them, and
Yeah.
I do enjoy using it. However, I think missing one element in those application is I think there's not a very clear linkage for how ones can really manifest or how they should behave in real life or to other people around them after
Hmm.
they practice their mindfulness. It's a very individual thing. Let's say, okay, I feel really stressed, and okay, I will spend like 10 minutes with Headspace and meditate, and I feel better. But
Hmm.
what does that mean to the people around you? Because
Yeah.
imagine at a workplace, when I'm very stressed, maybe I will communicate in a more weird way, like a short response to my colleagues,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
people maybe interpret it in a different ways. So I think mindful leadership or like mindful communication, I would
Hmm.
say, is about how you bring this mindfulness aspect from an individual level to a more social level or like in your organizational level. Um, and the second point, like now I just thought of, is those apps. I think it's missing a motivation behind why people should use it as well. It's like lacking of progress. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm using this, but I don't know if I'm doing well or not. You know, after 15 minutes meditate, I feel better. But does it mean, am I doing it right? Am I doing it like, if I do it every day, does it mean I'm progressing in certain techniques and stuff? So that is my thoughts and from my personal experience with those applications.
Yeah, no, and that makes a lot of sense. We talk so much about commercializing these apps and ensuring that people get the best out of it to help to have that personal self development, if you will. But I want to also go to the leadership and HR professionals here who are, I would say, for lack of a better term, skeptical of these types of methods, and even they could be skeptical of this. So I want you to take me through what would someone like yourself, as representing your company, Smooth Circle, how would that transform organizational practices, and thereby promoting that holistic, people first culture or approach, if you will, that aligns with the values of mindfulness leadership.
Yes, I really resonate with what you mentioned about a lot of my potential client that they are very
Yeah,
skeptical about, oh, mindfulness, what does that do to my business?
yeah,
This is very important to say. Actually, there are a lot of tangible steps company can embed mindfulness in their business routine.
mm-hmm.
Let's say I break it down into a few aspects. One is business meetings. Second one is interaction within the organization, meaning communications, as well as the most obvious ones like your wellness policies.
Yeah,
So, for example, business meeting, if you take 1 minute, 2 minutes before the meetings start, everyone can do a mindful practice. I'm not talking about meditation. Meditation may be a bit high level for
yeah,
some people. Maybe
yeah,
they've
yeah,
never tried before. Basically, maybe everyone's just journal. Like everyone have a post-it note. Just wrote down what they want to say in this meeting. Because how many 99% of the employees or the leaders, they often rush to a meetings
yeah,
nowadays,
exactly.
no? So then like just take 1 minute, 2 minutes to have a mindful gesture, to write down the point that you would like to discuss or share. That is already a mindfulness, like gesture
Mm-hmm.
embed into your business routine. About communication, we can talk a bit more about mindful communication is how much time you're actually listening as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
How inclusive are you in your communication? Is it everyone given a chance to talk? Maybe some people often just stay quiet, and
Yeah.
why you don't, like all those small things that actually company can do an audit, like they can do initial audits, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe I
Mm-hmm.
will provide my service to observe and provide
Yeah,
like some qualitative data to companies. So that is, yeah, that's has how I see. Actually, there are a lot of tangible actions companies can start with. It's like a super small step, and it does not cost you much.
exactly. And so for lack of a better term, coming full circle, um, we've, when I started from the start of the episode, we talked about the leadership principles, the, cultural intelligence and all of that. And, as I was listening to what you've been saying, a lot of it resonated with me in the sense of that learning from different cultures. You learn from not only your personal experience, you learn from what you did on your journey in India. You visited and lived so many different countries, and that has inspired you to move forward with your Smooth Circle business. And that is the way I believe leaders should lead from now on, and carrying that mindfulness leadership, uh, within your toolbox just adds that element of having that people culture, or people first culture, if you will. And so, if there's anything else that I have missed, or if there's anything you want to add, in terms of what kind of takeaways do you think leaders should have in terms of integrating mindfulness into not only who they are as leaders, who they are, and even it doesn't necessarily have to be leaders, but just even staff, and overall, how does that integrate into organizational culture from your perspective?
Yes, I am a very practical person. So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
if I would like to share like a takeaway or to company or whoever is listening to this podcast, first of all, I think they should understand what they want. Like what is the goal that they would like to get from if they implement mindfulness, and then really have a realistic assessment of how much resources they would like to invest into creating a realistic plan for implementation. Because for me, mindfulness is like, it's like losing weight. It's like
Yeah.
you do something small but consistent, and then you will see result. So I would highly recommend company or leaders to develop like a plan that really small follow, but then start small and
Yeah.
be realistic with yourself, like how much you're committed into it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. No, that's great. And I want to point out so if people are listening or watching in the background, you'll hear the background music, fireworks and whatnot. And you mentioned that you're speaking from Valencia, Spain. So what's the festival that's going on that you spoke about?
Yes, so the music, my background music today actually is from the biggest festival here in Valencia. It's called FAS. Basically, it's a festival. If you come at the first 2 weeks of March, you will see a lot of art statues
Hmm.
on the street. And then people will play drums, parade, and fireworks every day.
Hmm.
So that is where the music comes from. And then they will next Tuesday, they will burn all the art statues on the street with
Mm.
a firefighter stand by next to it.
See, that's the joy of recording, in the fact that anything can happen at any time, right? So I definitely, another event, if you will, that makes this webcast so special. And it was so special to have you and Sarah, like I mentioned to you at the outset, and even in our conversations, it was great to have you today. And I really appreciated all your insight, listening to your story, listening to your journey. And I'm pretty sure that people who watch or listen to this webcast webcast episode will take in a lot and hopefully apply it to their own lives, their careers, and to their organization. So I really, really appreciate this, Sarah. And yeah, so in closing, I just want to ask you a couple of questions. Well, one question particularly. So,
Sure.
what is the one song right now or book that inspires you?
Yes. So last year, I think by the end of last year, I finished a book called Feeding the Rats. It's
Mm,
talking about a climber's life on the edge. So it's about mountains, about climbing, but in the book, it's beautifully written and about how people explore our human desire to push limits.
mhm,
And it's resonate with me a lot because climbing is a big part of my life, and also it's combined with mindfulness and climbing for me. And that book is really inspired me to kind of push my limits a bit more when I feel difficult. Actually, I can go a bit further without myself knowing.
yeah.
So yeah, it's inspired me on thinking a bit more about how I run my business. Of course, it's not easy journey, as you know,
Yeah.
as well as in my personal life as well. So I really recommend this book. I really like the writing from this book. It's funny, enjoyable, entertaining.
And actually, it's funny because I think I don't think you mentioned it, or I don't know what in our earlier conversation I mentioned how I'm a water rat. So, according to the Chinese astrology there. So maybe that's something that there's parts of it that could resonate with me. Who knows? But be that as it may, so in closing, how can people reach you?
I am always on LinkedIn, Sarah Song. You will find me on LinkedIn, as well as email. So it's Sarah at smoothcircle.com. The smooth
Okay.
is SMOOVE.
That's right. That's right. All right. Thank you, Sarah, for this. I really appreciated it. And yeah, and definitely, for you and I, let's definitely keep in touch. And for the, for the rest of the audience who's watching and listening to our conversation, definitely they'll reach out to you if they have any questions, and then go from there. So thanks again, Sarah.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
All right, thanks. So that concludes another episode of Global Conversations. Make sure you like, subscribe, or share this episode or any other episodes that you can find on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. So until next time, thanks.